All right, hello. And today we are going to go through assignment one, which is all about CBT agenda setting from cognitive behavioral therapy. Okay, just for some logistics, I've actually pulled up the agenda setting assignment. You can see that it's under my profile. My name is Air, and I will guide us through this today as I have recently been learning about CBT agenda setting in my new course. As you can see, I'm choosing option one right here, where I get to complete the setting with a video recording. I'm actually using Loom to be able to record it, and they asked for me to do it less than 25 minutes. And what I plan to do is actually go through each tab here to be able to meet each of these criterias and to really be able to understand CBT a little bit more. All right, so first and foremost, we were asked to actually go through and identify the 7 steps of agenda, which is right here, 7 steps. It did take me a moment to really figure this out because there was some resources that had 5 steps and 6 steps, but I was finally able to find the 7-step agenda settings and what's required. To make it a little bit easier, I actually chose to put these 7 steps as one of my discussion posts. That way, I can definitely bring more communication into these 7 steps and help anybody else that maybe struggled like I did, but also be able to go directly from the 7 steps to the actual videos for critique and understanding. So I feel just based off of going in order here about critical evaluation and going through the steps that it would be smart to be able to identify the steps first before I try to, evaluate any videos or, go into the YouTube like examples. And then also I will go into individually at the very end 3 things I thought could be common difficulties that people like me, new counselors, might face whenever they're setting an agenda. Okay, so first and foremost, we have 7 steps. Most therapy sessions, CBT included, are 60 minutes. So I broke this down into timing and into like kind of some research based off of it, and things that you can kind of do beforehand and things that you do afterwards or as you're closing up. If you are just doing like the 5 steps, I like saw the whole check-in, the set the agenda, the bridge, the homework, all of that in a lot of the videos, but I didn't always see the before appointment and the wrap up. But before the appointment would be a great time for you to really understand who your patient is, who your client is, if they have any tests that they could take. I know that one of the videos actually discussed like depression, and he was using different tests to be able to judge where they were on kind of the emotional response and level. So that was quite interesting. But you also need to spend this time to be able to investigate the cultural background of your patient, to be able to kind of see like what brings them to therapy and what they're trying to overcome. And if you are somebody that can really align with their goals, and if you need to actually do any research beforehand to be able to truly identify with them, understand them, be empathetic, be authentic, and just really bring a lot of fidelity into the practice, which is definitely one of the things that as therapists we need to ensure that we are adhering to all of our ethical codes and our standards. So this could be anywhere between, doing 5 minutes, or if it's completely new to you and you've never had a patient like this where you are required to go outside the box, like maybe they're from a different country or maybe they have a different ethnicity than you, whatever it be, like this is your time to really be like, okay, let's set the success. And if you feel like, okay, I don't want to put a lot of time into this, I'll figure it out as I go, you'll really miss out on the opportunity to be able to provide quality care. So if it takes you 5 minutes or if it takes you 5 hours, you're only investing in your future to be able to help more people. All right. Next will actually be about 5 to 10 minutes of check-in. And I saw this labeled as check-in, but I also saw it as mood on one of these videos right here. I saw it as mood, and then emotional like state was another way that I saw it. I feel like check-in is very neutral, which is good, versus like if you just say like, hey, what's your mood? That could definitely be some charging words. Or if you're like calling it a mood check, I feel like that could be emotionally charged, versus just checking in, being like, okay, we haven't talked in a week, or we haven't talked in a month. What can happen in a month, right? So being able to kind of assess where your patient or your client is right off the bat is going to be super important, because they may not be in a very safe feeling, or they may not be necessarily in the mood of growth and investigation and revealing negative habits that are impacting their life. And you really need to be able to meet people where they're at emotionally to be able to guide them in any type of personal growth or practice. Likewise, they could be in the best mood ever and be super motivated and very happy to get going and, just inquisitive. But at the end of the day, if we don't check in and be able to really assess, what happened, what led to like your mood currently, your emotional state currently, you won't be able to progress in the best way for your agenda setting. All right. So next is the actual setting of the agenda. There was one video that really broke that down into different steps, and I will go through that here in a moment. But he was very much like, okay, what type of problems? Like, how are you feeling? What were you doing? He almost like had this redundancy to it, but I feel like he wasn't just repeating himself because he wanted to repeat himself. I felt like he was really trying to get to the root of the problem. And then being able to be collaborative is a big thing that I saw in both of the videos, where they prioritize the agenda and to see like, okay, what was your interpretation of what's important to you that we need to focus on? So I'll go over that in a moment as well. The bridge was kind of hard to tell at times. If you didn't know that you were looking for it, it could be really like kind of sneaky in a way. Like you don't necessarily like see it unless you're paying attention to it. But connecting the last session to like what is important during the last session, and like how can we bring that back up? Was there any elevation? Was there any growth? Or are we revisiting some of the habits, behaviors, thoughts, emotions that we're trying to grow from or we're trying to overcome? Homework is a big thing in CBT therapy. I would say it's even more important in this form of therapy versus what I've seen in psychodynamic or even in humanistic therapy. Homework tends to be really big with like symptom-based type of therapy, which would be CBT. And to find a patient that does homework, a patient that loves homework, can be a little bit challenging, but really applying the homework that is needed for them in a way that they can complete it and feel confident to complete it, and then also willing to complete it, like it's a collaborative effort, is really beneficial in that. So that leads us to problem solving, which you might have noticed is a majority of the entire session. Is we've identified through the check-in, through the agenda, the bridge, and the homework of what's really on the patient's mind. What are they feeling right now? And how can we come together to be able to use the different resources, the different tools to really problem solve some of these core themes that are developing negative habits in the patient's life. So that will be primarily all of the time that you spend in your session. And that is probably critical, because why would they be going to an expert or someone to be able to help problem solve some of the battles in their life currently if that wasn't a majority of what their session was? So that is a collaborative effort, but that is also why they're here and why it's important to really focus on maximizing that time. Finally, you see this a lot in like the movies as well, is like that wrap up. It's like that patient feedback, seeing how they feel currently, kind of bringing that back as a feedback loop to the very beginning when you were checking in. Did their mood change? Do they feel like they have the tools that they need to be a little bit more successful? Are we going to need to revisit this sooner rather than later? Is there homework that, makes them feel empowered that they can go and actually apply this to their life? And then what they would like to really see happen between their current session now and their future session. So the assignment, the homework, all of that kind of comes into play. So with that, that is kind of the breakdown of the 60-minute session. And there was 2 videos that were assigned to us from assignment 1 to investigate. So this is kind of taking care of the 7 steps. So we have been able to check that off. And now we want to actually evaluate the different videos. They did ask us not to go, play by play in the description. So I'm just going to do a very high level of what I witnessed in both of these. So this was the first video. This young woman, she's actually overcoming a lot through her work environment, trying to have more collaborative relationships. I also heard that she's struggling with some of her schoolwork and staying on time with that, as well as kind of possible transference between her emotional state, the high anxiety that she's having, and bringing that into maybe her relationship and possibly dissolving that relationship. So those were 3 things that she brought up whenever he was actually kind of checking in, and then also while he was trying to set the agenda for this current appointment. The bridge in this video was really hard to find. I felt like he spent a lot of time kind of trying to rank what she was battling overall, to where there wasn't a lot of bridging until the very end of the video, which would kind of put this, I feel like, out of order, but he did include it. And the fact that he spent so much time actually trying to really investigate what matters to her the most and asking her in different ways to be able to help her even kind of rank her own priorities, I actually thought was a positive. So even though I felt like the bridge was kind of pushed back a lot to the end, I felt like, okay, he was really trying to help her with some self-actualization, which is not CBT therapy as much as it is with like a humanistic. But overall, I think it was beneficial for her, and a sign that you don't necessarily have to be in just one type of therapy style. You can mix and match as needed. So I like how he kind of brought that into play. I didn't hear a lot of previous homework that he had. Maybe I actually missed that part, but he did really bring up, the last session, they really focused on not being as combative at work with her boss, and some tools that he gave her previously to be able to work through that. So maybe those were more like activity-based homework versus she didn't actually get like a pen and paper type of homework here. They did touch on it, it just wasn't really like elongated. And then finally, problem solving. He was getting into problem solving towards the end of the video. I feel like because this was a 7-minute video, he didn't actually get into like key tools and steps, but he really did set the stage of what that would be moving forward into the session. I also like how he was very much collaborative in the fact of, okay, how do you feel about this? Do you feel like this is going to be beneficial? Do you feel like this is going to be like progressive for you? And I could see like in the very beginning how she was not resistant, but almost like a little bit discombobulated in the sense of not sure of what this direction was going. Discombobulated, I would even take away and say like she needed help with getting direction, which is really beneficial for the therapist to be able to come alongside with her to be able to provide that kind of structure environment. And that is a key focus of CBT therapy, is providing a lot of structure. So in that was kind of the summation of the critical analysis I had for the first video. For the second video with the CBT demo agenda, this felt very much like school to me and not so much like therapy. This is where I'm not sure if it's because of like the demo of trying to explain it, like they said, is like this is a demo setting, or if this is somehow how people actually do therapy. I felt like there was a lot of authority difference here. Like it didn't feel collaborative. I know whenever he brought up the feedback that he did mention, he's like, this is a collaborative effort. But if I would have been the patient here, I don't necessarily feel like it was collaborative as much as he was teaching me what to do. He did a very good job of like asking him like, hey, wasn't like, how do you say it? He seemed a little bit redundant And he definitely didn't feel like empathetic, which made me feel like that more teacher type of setting. But he really did bring up the fact of like, okay, you have problems you want to address. That makes sense as far as like, that's why you're here. Do you feel any better? I almost felt like at some point he was trying to get some type of validation of like, okay, well, you do feel a little bit better. And that kind of didn't make me feel right. I was like, okay, he's either not truly feeling like he's excelling right now, and that's okay. We'll meet him where he's at, but not to kind of force him along. Excuse me. So I didn't necessarily like the second video. It felt very forced to me. And I felt like there was no empathy. I felt like there was like not a lot of authentic nature here. It felt like teaching. So he did go through all the steps. In fact, like he actually wiped down the board at one point and like rewrote the steps in different ways. And that is beneficial, I think, for learning, just not necessarily actual practice. Like I don't think it would be a smart idea to bring, a board unless maybe like this patient also stands up and is actually like working through the steps using the board together. But all that being said, he did very good at being like, okay, let's go ahead and investigate some of those thoughts. He was very supportive when it came to like saying, you definitely thought about this. And, they had a little bit of a laugh type of thing there. And I thought that that was really good as far as like making it very lighthearted. But maybe that's because they were acting and they were kind of playing together. So that's kind of the things that I noticed with both of these overall. And then finally, just a few things I want to bring up, going back to the 3 common difficulties that new counselors might face in agenda setting. And the ones that I think that would be critical would be number 1, client resistance. Client resistance as far as like, not everybody wants to go to therapy. Some people actually have court-ordered therapy. And I could see how just like that never-ending cycle of almost depression or anxiety could be very defeating for a patient, and there could be resistance there. Second, I could see just time constraints. Even as I'm doing this video here, like we have 25 to 30 minutes and actually says less than. I feel like I'm kind of still rushing to try to give all of this information and be able to share it. And I could see even with like this, if you were even perfect at it, I could definitely see you going over 35 minutes or maybe even forgetting a step because you feel rushed or you feel like you have to be on time for everything. So last but not least, just diverse goals or priorities. As a therapist, we might feel like we see something that they don't see and giving this like holistic perspective, but our goals for the patient may be actually different from their goals. So based off of different demographics, different age ranges, different cultures, I could see how one person could say that that is success and another person saying like that doesn't even like meet the bare minimum qualities of like life. So really just like investigating again, that background, that before the appointment assessing type of symptoms and like goals is going to be important. So overall, I know that my next step is to upload this to Turnkey and to really get back into CBT. That is my assignment 1 as A.R. Kramer.